GBA 2, Module 2, Audio Part 2. We're talking about some of the implications, especially when we are looking at community rating. Very simply, community rating is a pooled approach. There are variations, including manual rating adjustments. For example, the Federal Health Maintenance Organizations are based on adjusted community rating. And some states mandate a community rate but allows differences in age, gender, and location, which is more like a manual rating. So let me expand on a couple of these buzzwords because we threw a lot together. What is a manual rating? And then we'll get back to some of the community rating concepts. A manual rating basically, came back from the concept of big manuals. They were actual geographic manuals, and they were age and health-based rate manuals. Historically, it's still in place to some degree, although limited on what they can use as factors. You do still see it in small group and individual marketplace, and also with Medicare when it determines how it will pay Medicare HMOs. But we want to be kind of sensitive to the methods that go into experience rating. There are two main methods. One is prospective experience, and one is retrospective experience. Now, self-funded is different, and don't confuse this with retrospective experience arrangements. We'll get to self-funded in a moment. Let's backpedal a little bit. Prospective experience. Premium is based on prospective, the prior, or current claims of a group. It's also known as the Cadillac type of comprehensive, fully insured plan, pure prospective experience. Prospective experience rates look at the past claims to develop a premium on that basis. Prospective. The larger the group, hey, we got some credibility here because, more predictability. In this type of prospective insurance agreement, the insurer is going to bear the risk if claims experience minus their investment earnings, we talked about it early with investment earnings, if it's low, then that could hit potential profit, possibly loss for the insurance company. So they're bearing that when they set their rates. But the insurance company bears if claims experience minus the investment earnings exceeds the premium. Now, the insurance carrier may use a blended premium. What is that? It's basically that can reflect the group's experience as well as the carrier's overall book of business. Prospective rating, basically, we look at the employer's past data to help determine the rate for the future. And it does look at previous loss experience of the employer as past experience is used to develop a future premium. Now, fully insured plan, I outlined some key things for you. What is a fully insured plan in the classic model? Now, in retrospective insurance agreements, sometimes we have some programs. This is a retrospective experience insurance agreement where the group may pay a lower upfront premium. Call it a prepaid account. And the group will go to the carrier, hey, give us a lower premium, but we'll make a retroactive payment at the end of the year if need be. Basically, the group has better cash flow during the year, and the group now has the opportunity to invest a little bit, and they have a little bit of investment growth, although it'll be in a conservative vehicle. And then there's a reconciliation at the end of the year. Retrospective rating also examines the employer's experience to determine a premium for the same employer, but current experience actually will calculate the current premium. So, when will a firm make a retro payment at the end of the year? Well, I'm not saying it's always going to be the end of the year, the end of the period, but there's a day of reconciliation. So we'll make it to the insurer after looking at the actual claims and experience fees. If the prepayment was insufficient, and it very well might be, the firm is saying, hey, just make us responsible for paying the claim. Now, I remind people, this is not self-funded plans, although it has a lot of the same ramifications. This is an insured model, and that base premium that you're paying is subject to the premium taxes. It's a retrospective rated policy to some degree. Now, what is credibility? Very simple definition, and I put this on some of the key words that you see. I bold it: credibility factor. The larger the group, the more predictable. We get back into the tosses of the coin that I mentioned earlier. Now, what is credibility? This is an enhancement perspective. When you have a group, some people feel under 1,000, you have pretty decent credibility factors. The law of large numbers works for you. This is just to give you perspective, and I put that in the notes. What is credible? Now, a couple of buzzwords were thrown into the reading that I'd like to expand upon. One is called stop loss. In retrospective experience programs, the employer, the sponsor, the union, whatever we're working with here, can have, and here's a word, an aggregate stop loss for coverage in excess of a certain pooling point. Or they might have a specific stop loss, which limits the exposure of a firm for total claims. So aggregate, looking at the whole thing. Specific, basically, is going to be looking at, okay, if one person's like off the charts, let's have some protection for that. So that those are the two types of stop losses that are out there. Aggregate and specific. So let's move on to now what I promised, self-funding. Some people call self-insuring. I'm really careful on the buzzword there, because in reality, the trust fund, the union, the employer, if they're in a self-insured basis, yeah, they are self-insuring them. But I like keeping away from the word insurance and use funded itself, so no one thinks it's really insurance. Because if they think it's insurance, the last thing I need is that we have to then follow the state insurance mandated for insured plans. One of the interesting things with self-funded programs is you're not governed by the laws of the states in general, that insured plans have to do. So all the mandates, like in New Jersey, all the mandates not necessarily apply in self-funded, self-insured plans. So I keep the word out. In fact, if you look at your ID card, if you want to take it out of your wallet, turn it around, look at it, it might say, this is a self-funded arrangement administered by blah, blah, blah. So what it's saying on your ID card, it's self-funded, it's not insurance, and not subject to some of the state issues out there. And that's a concept. Self-funded is huge. Self-funded plans account for probably 60% plus, we'll talk more of that, of individuals are actually in a self-funded plan. Now, do they realize it's self-funded? I don't know. But, it's out there. And the risk actually is going to the employer, the union, who's ever running the trust. But with the law of large numbers, there's some predictability, and then they can protect themselves with some sort of stop-loss condition. If they choose to. If they're large enough, they might say, hey, we got the law of large numbers. Self-funded plans, very simply, are those in which companies choose to pay for some or all of the health insurances of the workers rather than buying insurance. Now, they may use as an administrator an insurance company or a division of the insurance company. And they might self-fund maybe just the medical, but not the dental. Although the dental is pretty predictable, real predictable, but for convenience, they might not go self-funded on that, or they might self-fund both. So that's one of the concepts. Now, ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, it's interesting. That was pension legislation, but in the 1974 ERISA program, there was more about health insurance in that regulation. And I want to just take a little aside here for fun. At that period of time, I was in university and majoring in benefits, employee benefits, and financial planning, and I froze. They said, "What does ERISA stand for?" I just froze. on the midterm or the final, I remember I just put every ridiculous idea since Adam. Obviously, I didn't even get partial credit. But what does ERISA come up with? It's legislation that allows plans that are self-funded to be exempt from state insurance regulation. That's kind of a key thing that we just shared on. So there is a robust audience of self-funded plans. It used to be just large groups, but even small groups do it. They might pool with other small groups. And I've seen small groups go in, almost in the single digits because they have a little pooling with other small groups. They're very attractive. In fact, I mentioned New Jersey before, when the small group market is almost non-existent. So many employers have banded together and come up with self-funded, in a pooling arrangement, self-funded programs, just to combat that. But self-funded is definitely moving up very fast out there. Now, let's clarify some words. What is an administrative service-only contract? It basically it's between an insurance company and a self-funded plan, or a group of providers, and where the insurance management is done, but on administrative services basis. So many people said, I have Blue Cross. No, that's the network that they're using, and that's who's going to be adjudicating or coordinating the claims payments. You have a self-funded arrangement, not a fully insured one. So that is an ASO. Then groups that can bear the underwriting risk themselves, maybe even use the reinsurance, they may simply have an ASO contract from either an insurance carrier or a third-party administrator providing it. Now, in the reading, actually in the outline, I kind of clarified the slight nuances between an ASO and a TPA, an administrative service-only insurance company, and a TPA to clarify some subtleties for your enrichment. But either way you go, these are very powerful concepts to have ASO. They've been in place since '74. They're gaining in popularity, and I say now that we're at 60%, it's going up fast. The subtle differences, you can look if it's an insurance carrier. One of the key things is premium tax is minimized because of that. The self-funded plan with a third-party administrator is becoming popular as the days go on, as an alternative of just having an insurance carrier acting, in essence, in that type of role. Now, one of the things I want to spend some time on is in your outline, is giving you a perspective and overview of the rating methods used by HMOs. We talked about community rating, and they can just use a pure community rating. However, there are some variations that HMOs use. One is the adjusted community rating, using pooled data blended with data on contract mix, looking at single, two-party, family contracts with within the firm, the size, the charging ratios, that we see there. They'll adjust the community rating. Another slight variations is the community rating by class, which adds to what we just talked about. We'll kind of look at age and gender mixes, but not to an individual participant necessarily. So those are some spin-offs that we have. And HMOs that are federally qualified can use traditional community rating, the adjusted community rating, or community rating by class. I make a hard emphasis here that neither community rating, the adjusted community rating, nor the community rating by class in any way is based on a specific group's past or current claims experience. Community is more in flavor in this model. Now we wrap up the assignment, and to give you perspectives as you get to the reading on ACA's influence on health insurance underwriting. The whole concept of combining dissimilar groups becomes paramount. Basically, we want to kind of face the reality. In the good old days, there was a large disparity between rates if there were young folks with older, young folks versus the older folks, great disparity. And that disparity now is the 3-to-1 ratio is the max that can be done when you're pricing a rate. So all of a sudden, the young kids or the young folks that are in a group, they actually, when we look at the rate thing, they're kind of paying more for many scenarios, and the older people are paying less because the disparity is 3-to-1. It used to be like 5-to-1 could be done. So ACA kind of brought it closer, so the impact of age is less of a factor as it was in the good old days. So we want to be, sensitive to the consequences of combining dissimilar groups, while also looking at some of the underwriting stipulations of ACA that are out there. Now, ACA prohibits insurers from charging older adults more than 3 times the premium amount for younger adults. That's what we kind of want to focus on, understanding that there are limitations going on for that. That's kind of a summary, kind of presenting the lay of the land as you get into the readings for assignment 2. Now, I want to take a pause here. In the back of your reading material, call it the chapter reading, if you go over to page 47, there's some discussion questions there. They're very thought-provoking questions out there. I would encourage people to kind of, in their mind, look at those 7 questions that are out there, as well as the discussion questions I already posted on the discussion board, and reflect on it. If you want to add a thought process to the discussion board based on one of those questions, please feel free to do that. Those 7 plus the 4 that I added, I think is going to cause some enrichment in grasping some of the material. So I encourage you to do that. It's a joy to be with you in this program. And thank you.